My daughter took my Social Security money and left for a beach vacation. Believing I'd survive on almost nothing, she expected to come back to a weak, hungry mother begging for help. She had no idea what was about to change. Intro as requested. Before we begin, just a small request. Hit the like button to support our stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and how you're doing. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a news story. Your one like, one comment, and one subscribe truly encourages us and keeps us going. The front door had slammed shut 3 hours earlier, but my daughter's strong perfume still hung in the hallways. Sharp and out of place. It always felt too loud for our old apartment, where the air usually smelled of dust, fabric, and dried lavender. The silence that followed her departure pressed against my ears. I stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the pantry door. Normally, I loved quiet evenings. They meant rest after long hours at my sewing table, after aching fingers and a stiff back. But that evening, the silence felt different. It felt hungry, and so was I. I opened the cabinet. Empty shelves stared back at me. No rice, no soup, not even a slice of bread. My chest tightened. Hunger isn't dramatic, it's patient, persistent, and humiliating. The kind that grows louder as the sun goes down. I remembered my daughter rushing around earlier, tossing swimsuits and sundresses into her suitcase. Just before leaving, she had held out her hand and said, "Give me your card, Mom. Just in case. ATMs can be unreliable." I hesitated. That's my entire check. What will I live on? She rolled her eyes. "You're overreacting. You have grits. Boil them with water. It's good for detoxing at your age." Then she left. I reached for the glass jar labeled grits, written in my handwriting years ago. The jar felt wrong to light. I opened it. At the bottom sat a few dusty grains. That was all. She had lied. Or worse, she hadn't cared enough to check. Cold spread through my chest. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was neglect. I searched her room next, hoping for spare change. Clothes were everywhere, makeup open on the dresser, receipts on the floor. Nothing useful until I noticed a folded paper near the trash. It was her travel receipt. Hotel, flights. The total cost stared back at me. 2 weeks at the beach. 3 months of my income. That was when something inside me stopped, shrinking and started hardening. I walked back into the living room and looked around at the furniture. The silver, the antiques I'd protected for decades. And for the first time, I asked myself one dangerous question. Why was I starving in a house full of value? That night, I made a decision that would turn my daughter's perfect vacation into a nightmare she never saw coming. I stood in the living room, surrounded by silence and furniture that had never truly been mine. The heavy wooden cabinets, the locked glass shelves, the silver sets saved for the future, all of it looked different now. Not precious, not sentimental, just expensive objects watching me go hungry. For years, I told myself these things were for my daughter. For her wedding, for her future children, for some perfect day that never arrived. Meanwhile, I patched my clothes, skipped meals, and convinced myself sacrifice was love. My stomach growled again, low and angry. That sound pushed me forward. I remembered an old newspaper folded neatly under the coffee table. My daughter always called it junk, but I knew what I was looking for. I unfolded the classifieds until I found the ad I had circled weeks ago, almost as a joke. Private buyer. Antiques, silver, porcelain. Fair prices. House calls. My hands trembled as I picked up the phone. I hadn't done anything bold in years. Each number I dialed felt like crossing a line I was never meant to cross. A calm male voice answered. "Yes. My name is Yuli," I said, surprised by how steady I sounded. "I have some silverware I want to sell." The next morning, right on time, the doorbell rang. The man who stood there was neat, gray-haired, and observant. He didn't look at me with pity. That mattered more than I expected. When he stepped inside, his eyes slowly traveled around the room. I saw his surprise. He had expected trinkets, not a lifetime of carefully preserved wealth. I opened the velvet case and revealed the silver spoons, engraved, heavy with history. He examined them carefully, then named a price. A month ago, I would have accepted instantly. But something had changed. "No," I said. "That's not fair." He blinked, then smiled. We negotiated. For the first time in years, someone listened to me. When he left, the spoons were gone and a thick stack of cash rested in my hand. I didn't cry. I didn't feel guilt. I felt powerful. I put on my best coat and walked somewhere I hadn't dared enter in over a decade, a high-end grocery store downtown. I didn't look at prices. I chose what I wanted. Warm bread, real cheese, fresh fruit, smoked fish, food that smelled like life. At home, I set the table properly for myself. I ate slowly, deliberately, tasting something far richer than flavor. Freedom. That evening, as I leaned back in my chair, satisfied and calm, my phone rang. I looked at the screen and smiled. It was my daughter. She thought I was starving, but the moment she opened her mouth, I realized how badly she had underestimated me. I answered the phone slowly, taking another sip of wine before lifting the receiver. "Mama," my daughter's voice burst through, loud and cheerful. I could hear waves crashing in the background and music thumping. "Just checking in. You okay over there? Still alive?" I smiled at the dark window in front of me. "I'm doing fine," I said calmly. She laughed. "Don't lie. I know you're probably bored and hungry. Remember to stretch the grits, add more water. It fills you up." Her words used to sting. That night, they slid right off me. "I've managed," I replied. She scoffed. "Managed how?" "Found coins in the couch." She didn't wait for an answer. "Anyway, don't waste electricity. I don't want a big bill when I get back." The call ended as suddenly as it began. She hung up, satisfied, confident, certain. I was exactly where she left. Me, small and dependent. I placed the phone down gently and looked around the apartment. One sale hadn't been enough. Not anymore. The next morning, the antique buyer returned. This time, I showed him a gold brooch, an old piece my daughter loved to wear without asking. He examined it carefully, admiration clear in his eyes, and named a price that made my heart skip. I accepted without hesitation. Then came the paintings, the clock, the rug. One by one, the apartment emptied. With every item removed, the air felt lighter, the rooms brighter. I wasn't losing my past, I was reclaiming my present. That afternoon, while sorting through a drawer she used for clutter, my fingers brushed against a bright red folder. It wasn't mine. Inside were papers neatly stacked. My name, her signature, a facility brochure. It was a plan, a power of attorney, a state-run nursing home known for neglect. My knees nearly gave out. She hadn't just taken my money. She had been preparing to take my home, my freedom, my life, quietly, legally, and without guilt. The fear didn't last long. It hardened into resolve. I made one final call to the buyer. "Bring a truck," I said. "We're clearing everything." By evening, the apartment stood nearly empty and the refrigerator stood full. Not just full, but overflowing. Delicacies, fruit, bottles chilled and gleaming. This wasn't indulgence. This was defense. I closed the fridge door and rested my hand against it, steady and calm. She was coming home soon. And when she opened that refrigerator, she would finally understand that I was no longer the woman she left behind. 2 days later, the front door opened and my daughter walked straight into the reckoning she never expected. The key scraped in the lock just after noon. I didn't rush to greet her. I stayed seated at the kitchen table, calmly stirring my tea. The apartment smelled fresh flowers, soap, and something richer she wouldn't recognize. "Mama, I'm home," my daughter called, dragging her suitcase inside. Her voice carried victory, like she expected applause for returning. She stepped forward, then stopped. "Why does it smell different?" she asked, suspicious. "And why is it so empty in here?" She brushed it off quickly. "Never mind. I'm starving." She headed straight for the refrigerator, already complaining. "I knew you wouldn't cook anything." She opened the door. Her scream cut the air. Jars of caviar stacked neatly. Bottles chilled and gleaming. Fresh fruit, cheeses, smoked fish, more food than she'd ever seen in that fridge. She staggered back like she'd seen a ghost. "What is this?" she whispered. I turned to face her, calm, steady. "Dinner." She grabbed a jar with shaking hands. "Where did you get the money? Did you steal? Did you take a loan?" "I sold what belonged to me," I said simply. Her eyes darted around the apartment, finally noticing what was missing. The silver, the clock, the rug, the brooch. Her voice cracked. "You sold my inheritance." I stood. I ate it. She lunged for the fridge, clutching bottles and jars. "I'll return this." "You've lost your mind." I placed my hand on the table. One sharp sound. "Put it back." She froze. "You spent my money on your vacation," I said quietly. "You left me with nothing. This food is mine." Her face twisted with rage. "You're sick. I'm calling a doctor. You need help." The doorbell rang. Not doctors. My neighbor stepped in, followed by the antique dealer. Papers in hand. Signed, notarized. She was perfectly sound, the man said evenly. "Sharp, actually." My daughter collapsed into silence. I reached into the drawer and placed the red folder on the table. The nursing home brochure. The power of attorney. Her face drained of color. "You planned to send me away," I said, "so you could have everything." She backed toward the door. "I changed the locks this morning," I added. "You don't live here anymore." She left screaming curses behind her. I locked the door. Twice. That evening, I poured tea, sat by the window, and took a slow bite of bread and fish. For the first time in decades, I wasn't waiting for permission to live. I was finally living. Do you think she did the right thing? Where is the line between sacrifice and self-destruction? Tell me in the comments. Your voice matters. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share. You never know who needs to hear this today.